Hello everyone and welcome to ArthaPoint CUET MA English preparation. Today we will be starting with a very important discussion, a very important topic, that is literary devices. Right, so literary devices, this is a very crucial topic as far as your CUET MA English examination is concerned, because you get about 20% of question from this topic. Now, this is also a very difficult topic to understand because this is very vast in nature. But if you know the basic meaning of each and every literary device, I would make sure that you get the right answers in your exam, right? Now, let us look at the various literary devices one by one. We would be covering one literary device in one session. It would consist of what the meaning of the literary device is, where is it is used in the history, and what are types of other types, if any, what are its types. Now, today's topic is allegory. What is allegory? Now, this is again something that you must have heard of in your classes, something that you must know of, because this is one of the easiest literary device, right? Now, further we would be discussing कि literary basically allegory होता क्या है, उसके types क्या हैं, and उसके examples हम literature से निकालेंगे और एक-एक example के बारे में understand करेंगे. Now let us move on by understanding कि allegory क्या है. Now allegory is any story or poem or a picture that can be interpreted to reveal a hidden meaning, typically a moral or a political one. इसका क्या मतलब है? एक allegory कोई भी poem या story या picture हो सकती है in which the meaning is hidden, right? आपका meaning straightforward नहीं होगा. It would be indirect, it would be hidden. So allegory makes use of extended metaphor. So allegory comes from a Latin word which is called veil. Now veiled means hidden. Your moral would always be hidden. So allegory usually has either a moral, a political one, or a religious one. So it could be religious, it could be moral in nature, or political in nature. Right. Now let us move on to what are the types of allegories. So there are two types of allegories broadly that we will be discussing today. The very first is called a fable. Now, all of you must have heard of the story of a tortoise and a hare. सबको बचपन में खरगोश और tortoise वाली story बताई जाती है, wherein they both these creatures end up into a race. The hare is very confident, not just confident, the hare is overconfident. The hare, therefore, it sleeps during the race and eventually the tortoise wins. यही story है, सबने सुनी है, tortoise and hare की story. Now, this particular story is an allegory. And इसका nature क्या है? It is a fable kind of allegory. Now, what is a fable? Fable allegory, it is a very specific type of allegory in which the author or the poet uses animals and objects to tell a story. So, fable में हमेशा animals और objects का use होगा. जैसे in tortoise and the hare. Another very important, not important I would say, but something that everybody knows is the story of the ant and the grasshopper. अब ant and the grasshopper की story में क्या होता है? So basically the ant during the summertime, they collect food for themselves while the grasshopper makes fun of them. It does not collect food for itself for the winter time. Now winter arrives. Ants have sufficient food for their survival, whereas the grasshopper ends up suffering during that period. Right. So basically, through the ant and the grasshopper, it basically teaches us that one must make best use of the present situation rather than suffering later. So use of animals to present a moral meaning. That is what a fable is. Let us move on to the next type of allegory. The next type of allegory is a parable. Now, what is a parable? Now, parable, unlike in a fable, parable does not use any animals or object. In parable, human characters are used to convey a basic message. Right? For example, in the Bible, we have characters such as good shepherd. We have characters such as faithful servant. So humans are used to represent the morals, to represent the message. Now, these messages have layers into it, right? A parable is usually religious kind. It is religious in nature, right? Now, it is a type of allegory. It is set in the real world. It teaches us a lesson of ethics and morality. So let us look at this example, the Good Samaritan. Now, what happens with the Good Samaritan? So, in the Good Samaritan, this is basically a parable wherein a Jewish traveler is attacked and it is left for dead behind. While most of people ignore this Jewish traveler, a Samaritan helps him. Now, despite the tensions between Jews and the Samaritans at the time, a Samaritan comes to help the Jew. So the moral of the story is to show how to love everyone, how humankind, the basic human kindness above every religion, right? And not everybody is your enemy. So the Good Samaritan is basically used to describe any person who helps others. So basic moral is to help everybody. Then there's another very major example of a parable, that is the prodigal son. Now, in this particular parable, the prodigal son, it involves a man with two sons. The youngest son asks for the inheritance and wastes it. So the other, then he comes back to his father. He asks to work as a servant. Now the older brother shuns the younger son, but the father forgives the younger son, welcomes him back with open arms, and he redeems back the prodigal son. So basically, the moral is that everybody should be given a second chance who repents their mistakes. So anybody who's repenting their mistake, who wants to correct what he has done wrong, they should be given another chance. So that is prodigal son, another very famous parable, right? Let us move on and look at some other examples from literature. The very first example that we would be looking at is Plato's Allegory of the Cave, right? Plato ka Allegory of the Cave is one of the most famous allegories. So even the title says Allegory of the Cave. So you must know how this work is an allegory. Now, Plato's Allegory of the Cave, it is written as a dialogue between Plato's brother and his mentor Socrates. Plato describes a group of people that are chained in a cave facing towards the wall. Right? Now, this cave in itself, it represents the complete state of the world. Now, there are these cavemen that are chained to the wall. They represent people who live their life in ignorance. So basically, एक cave है, उसके अंदर कुछ cavemen हैं जो chained है wall के लिए, and they're not doing anything उससे निकलने के लिए बाहर. वो उस particular position में they are fine, they're living their life in ignorance, right? Now there's a character in so they describe a philosopher. So how this philosopher frees itself from the cave, this philosopher is able to come out of the cave, is able to see the real world and is enlightened. This now philosopher would come back and enlighten the other cavemen. So that is what this allegory is all about. So it basically is representing the current state of the world, right? So how there's darkness around us, how there's a need for movement into the light, how knowledge is required. So that is the basic meaning of this book. Next example we have is that of the Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Now, this particular work was published in 1678. This is a parable. This is of religious kind. And this is basically a Christian allegory, right? So this work represents the adventures of the protagonist, who's named Christian, from his home from his home, that is the city of destruction, to a celestial city. So Christian basically represents an ideal religious man, and the other characters that are in this book, they represent the virtues that a man must possess. So basically एक journey है from darkness to light, a basic journey of a man जो represent कर रहा है कि एक असली religious Christian man कैसा होना चाहिए. What virtues should this man possess, right? Next, we have a very, very important allegory, the animal farm. This is a fable basically. Right, so third example, this, of course, you must know the author's name. This is a work by George Orwell. So George Orwell's Animal Farm was published in the year 1945. So this is one of George Orwell's finest work, and this is a political fable. जैसे पहले वाला religious parable था, ये political fable है. George Orwell very conveniently uses animals to represent the current situation of politics that was going on in that period. The book consists of a group of animals that revolt against their human masters. They rise up and form a sovereign government led by the pigs, and how these pigs then, after coming into a power, they themselves become like this master like this human master, and assaults the other animals in the farm. Right. Now, this book was also based on the Russian revolt that was going on and the betrayal of the cause of Joseph Stalin. Right. So George Orwell in this particular work was criticizing the sovereign socialist party. Right. So that is the basic moral of the story. George Orwell felt that all the animals, so basically all human beings, must be treated equally. Because in this book, there's what Orwell was trying to communicate was through these animals that everybody should be treated equally, and this would solve a lot of social and economic problems. But he also knew that even if this system of equality is established, there would always be certain people who would consider themselves as above everybody else. Like the pig in this particular character of pig in this book. Right? Give this a thorough read. We would be discussing this book in length when we would be discussing the work of George Orwell. Now, let us look at other examples from literature. We have a lot of allegories present. We have the Lord of the Rings, we have Fire Plowman, we have the Scarlet Letter, Life of Pi, the Chronicles of Narnia. So the Metamorphoses, right? The Fairy Queen. So you must know certain examples of allegory. You could be asked very direct questions in your CUET examination. For example, what literary device does the animal farm use? Or there you could be given four examples, four options, and you could be asked which of the following is an allegory, or which of the following is a parable, or which of the following is a fable. So therefore, you must understand what is the meaning of an allegory, what are types of allegory, and what are the examples of allegory. Now, with this, we would end today's session. We would be moving on to the next literary device in the next session. Till then, take care. You could ask your doubts, if any, in the comment section below. Thank you.